crash, correction, bubble, shift, recalibration, whatever you want to call it, there is a lot of concern around the current landscape in the sports card industry. Something's going on, probably. It sure looks like it is. Prices have been tanking a lot lately on a lot of stuff, mostly basketball, but other stuff too. So we're gonna have another little chat today. This is kind of spun off of the video from yesterday. If you watched that one, where I used the card market to compare to the comic book market, the struggles that the card market's going through now, why I don't think those will affect the comic book market as much. Today, we're going to focus strictly on the card stuff. So before we get into it, like, comment, subscribe, YouTube stuff down below. Market Movers affiliate link, eBay affiliate link. If you're going to make any purchases, consider using the link to help support the channel. All that being said, let's rock and roll. So I talked yesterday about, generalization in the sports card market with just using Luka's base prism as a general ebb and flow macro picture without getting into specifics. Too many specifics. So as we all know, prices have been going down on a lot of stuff lately. Now, is it the normal ebb and flow of, we're in the NBA season? So of course prices were going to come down, because really, on one hand, so we're going to look at both cases, because let's be honest, none of us really know. Is it a crash? Is the bubble bursting? Is it a correction, a restabilization? Whatever. Throw around whatever big fancy economic term that you want to. No one making a YouTube video, talking at a card show, whatever, posting on Twitter. No one actually knows what the hell's going on. People have theories. Some theories are going to be right. Some are going to be wrong. We're all looking at the same data. We're all making conclusions. Someone's going to come out looking right. Someone's going to come out looking wrong. It is what it is. But clearly, something is going on as prices continue to slip on a lot of cards. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that, Vegas Dave style and start lighting cards on fire, that the market's going to crash. Crash to me implies that it goes all the way back to where it was back here in late 2019, early 2020, when Luka base prism PSA 10s were $140. Once again, I'm using Luka base prism 10 as just a normalizer here. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anyone thinks that's going to happen. But when you look at the charts, and once again, we're using Luka. I have a bunch of different stuff pulled up here, but just using Luka at the moment. His prices are currently back down to $830. And that takes it all the way back to basically July 4th pricing, give or take a couple days. Now, they're probably trending a little bit higher than that. PWCC had the brilliant idea over the weekend to run 37 base prism PSA 10s at auction, all ending at the same time, and it tanked the comps because they all ended together and there just wasn't enough, buyers to support 37 of them ending literally within minutes of each other. It made no sense. I don't know why they do that like that. Spread that stuff out. Regardless, side tangent. But the market is clearly doing something. But once again, is this the normal? Because we saw this in football. Most cards went down during football season. I've talked about it a ton. When you look at the data, go from week 1 to week 17, a majority, 95% of the cards went down. I don't think people talked about it as much because football doesn't drive the market like basketball does. People were talking, oh man, I can't believe how bad this guy's doing, whatever, but it didn't permeate things. So I think some of it is, once again, there's a million different factors. I think some of it is the natural ebb and flow of the sports seasons, because we are seeing, I'm recording this Monday evening. We are seeing some players slowly spike in the playoffs. Ja Morant, Trae Young, for one, saw 10 to 20% increases over the last couple days based off of them performing well in the playoffs. That's good to see. However, I think if this was the same time last year, that would have been a 30 to 40% increase overnight. Look at, this is once again using Luka as an example here. This big cliff right here, that was Luka going psycho in the playoffs. Now we're only one game in. Who knows what'll happen here with the rest of these guys. But it's at least encouraging to see that when these guys play in the spotlight, prices do start to spike back up again, like we saw in the football market. So I do think some of it is the cyclical nature. Now, there's a million other things going on too. Do not get me wrong. I'm not trying to paint a pretty picture here. But the latest trends and all the talking heads, myself included, and people are just getting smarter about population counts on some of these high pop base cards like Luka's PSA 10 Prism, 17,000 of them, Zion's PSA 10 Prism, ton of those, so on and so forth down the line. And most of the market indexes look at base Prism, right, wrong, or indifferent, as the indicators. Now, the more rare stuff has also not held up super well. For example, we see Luka's chart here. This is his base Prism PSA 10. And, back here on Christmas Day, this was going for about $2,000. It's down to a little over $800. So let's look at his silver. Here's his silver. It basically follows the exact same line. So at Christmas Day, this peaked at around 8,000, give or take 9,000, actually 9,000. Oh, that was not Christmas Day. I'm sorry. That was February. Let's just use Christmas Day again. It peaked at around 8K. It is currently down to, what's the ending average here? 6K. So, yes, it has not dropped as far as the base Prism. Pop on this as 2,000 compared to 17,000. But it has obviously significantly came down from its highs. But if you just look at the general market lines, they look very similar. And once again, this current price matches about where it was in mid to late July. So it is dropping a little slower because of the low pop nature of the card. But it is clearly pulling back. So, I mean, we could sit here for hours and talk about the reasons why. The world getting back to normal, the ecosystem I think there's two primary things. One is the world getting back to normal, and two, the unsustainable ecosystem of what the card market was last year. So I've talked about this recently when Step Back was on. I talked about it with Dakota the other night on Sports Card Anonymous. A few other people have mentioned this as well. Last year at this very time, you could basically buy a $10 to $15 base card, paper, Zion, Donruss, whatever, spend $20 to send it in the PSA, get it back in about 3 to 4 months, and sell it for $150 to $175, making about a $100 profit per card. Switch out the cards, whatever, but you get the point. You could buy low end stuff, grade it for cheap at $15 to $20 a card, and 5x your money in a very short period of time. People then took those profits and reinvested it back into the hobby, buying bigger, better, badder cards, flipping those, rinse, repeat, and it made this whole entire ecosystem. At the same time, you had the retail craze going on, breakers going nuts, demand for retail going insane, sealed product just across the board going crazy, all that stuff going on. All right, what has happened since? Grading's a nightmare. Grading has outpriced a lot of cards, and what I mean by that is that same Zion paper Donruss, there's nowhere to send that to now. I shouldn't say nowhere. You could send that card to like an SGC. Maybe you get an SGC 10. I don't know what they're going for right now. I haven't checked the comps on that card forever. But let's say you spend $20 on the card, $30 to grade it, maybe $25 because you use a bulk submitter. So you're into the card for $50. And it comes back in SGC 10 and you could get, let's just conservatively say $80 to $90 for it. You're still making a good profit, which we've talked about this as well. You could still make money in this, but you're going to make less and you're going to have to work a little harder for it. Last year, 1 year ago at this time, the money machine, as Rudy would say, was going burr. Just money was just printing out of PSA slabs. People were making money hand over fist. Every card in the world just went up. It was great. There was no sports on. The Last Dance was happening. Everything was sunshine, kittens, and rainbows and puppies. Fast forward a year later, everyone wants their cut. Grading companies want their cut. Walmart and Target, fed up with the retail situation, have obviously put all those restrictions in place. So now you take out People flipping raw to grade, that money, that profit, that money that people were making off of that is now out of the ecosystem. Okay. People flipping retail wax, that money is now out of the ecosystem. In general, fees and shenanigans going up across the board. eBay's become a little bit more difficult. Incoming, this isn't even into effect yet, but the tax changes for next year that are going to be into place. People are kind of looking at that and looming. What else has happened? And we mentioned it earlier, the world getting back to normal and people beginning to spend money in other areas. Also, stimulus checks are gone. And I don't know that, stimulus checks definitely helped, but I think it was more the combination of stimulus checks and people not actually spending their day to day dollars on day to day stuff. You're not going to Starbucks 17 times a day anymore. You're not going on vacation. You're not going out to eat 3 times a week. You're not taking the wife or the kids to movies every weekend. All of a sudden, you have a lot more disposable income and a lot more time on your hands. The world's getting back to normal. The industry, the hobby, if you will, as a whole, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, has gotten greedier. This time last year, or a little bit prior to this, you could buy Prism boxes for a few $100s, and then within weeks they would be selling for 2, 3, 4x, sometimes 5x, like retail Prism boxes, hobby boxes, etc. Then what did Panini do? They said, we want our piece of that action, Dutch auction. That sucked some of the profit out. So, the primary companies in the hobby said, well, wait a second, we want ours. Can't let all these just random people make all their money off of it. We need our cut too. So all of these things, and probably a million others that I didn't even touch on, have attributed to a major pullback in the sports card market. And anyone that's telling you that's not the case is just lying to themselves. PSA shuts down. There's that in play as well. And I don't think I saw some comments about like, well, when PSA opens back up again, that'll save everybody. I don't know that it will. I mean, those cards are going to hit the market and someone has to want to buy them. And if the sports card market is down in general, then are people going to want to buy those cards? I don't know. It depends on the card, I guess. But I have a feeling, I've talked about this before as well, most of the stuff sitting at PSA is probably junk. Probably a good portion of that 10 million cards or whatever the hell they have is probably a lot of freaking junk. And they do seem to be pop controlling. I usually don't buy in the conspiracy theory stuff like that too often, but there's a lot of PSA 9s coming out of PSA recently compared to 10s, which I don't know is the worst thing in the world. I think they should grade fairly, but I think they're reading the writing on the wall as well. I think PSA sees what's coming. Imagine being PSA and you have pumped God knows how many millions of dollars into hiring new tech, bigger offices, all this stuff. And now all of a sudden, before you even get it up and running, because they're still closed, the cookie is crumbling underneath your feet. And once again, I'm not going all doom and gloom that it's going back to zero or anything like that. But I think there's going to be some pain over the next few months as people that bought in these areas, regardless of the card, just to take out whatever. If you bought here or you bought here, what are you doing? Are you sitting on it and letting it just keep saying like, hey, it'll come back? I need to hold. Or should you sell and say, okay, let me get out of this thing now because I think it's going to go a lot lower. And then rather than just ride the wave down and then hope it comes back, just sell now. And I think a lot of people are having some very difficult conversations with themselves right now in their financial software to see how their books balance out. We talked about Luka a bunch. Let's look at, Zion's charts doing the same thing. I ran this all the way back to January of 2020 when his PSA 10 Prism was going for about $300. His PSA 10 Prism last sale is at $460, $470. He's out of the playoffs. He's hurt. He's being semi-forgotten about. There's 17,500 of these. How low does this go? If this gets all the way back to pre-pandemic prices, what are we calling that? Does that mean it crashed? Certain segments are doing okay. Some vintage stuff, rare stuff is doing a little bit better, but in general, almost all that stuff is downshifting to a degree. Sure, some individual cards are spiking up here and there, but as a whole, across the sports, basketball is getting hit the hardest. But the doom and gloom of the basketball market is anchoring and pulling down the other sports, in my opinion. Baseball, in my opinion, was going to go down anyways because we're in season. The data seems to show us lately that when players get in season, their prices actually go down unless they just play out of their minds. So, Zion's had waves here and there, but in general, the key thing here is that when it has dipped in the past, it hasn't necessarily ever dipped this low before. This is the lowest it's been since uh, February. Here's a low point here at around 480. Low point in the summer into fall was 530. Low point in season was 550. And now we're at an ending average of 470, which you have to go back to February, February 2020 to where that card price was that low before. So when people talk about the sports card bubble bursting, is this the bubble? Have we been in the bubble since the beginning of the pandemic and now the pandemic's over and that's the bubble and the party's over? Now, once again, I don't see this card going back to being a $100 card or anything crazy like that. Actually, I don't even know if this card ever was a $100 card. Probably wasn't. Because when these started coming out of PSA, the market was already primed. Because remember, the card market did start to pick up prior to the pandemic actually starting. The card market was getting hot in January, February, and March prior to the lockdowns. So it was already heading in this direction, and then that just sent it to the next level. Let's look at some other stuff. LeBron Topps Chrome. This is the PSA 10, and you can see, I mean, one of the most popular players on the planet. His main primary base rookie card peaked up at almost 40K, over 40K, almost 45K, and is now back down to 21.6 in a PSA 10 Prism and trending down. And they haven't looked great against the Suns, at least in the first game. We'll see what happens in game two. What happens to this card if he gets bounced in the playoffs? It's probably going to come down even more. And once again, where does this bottom back out at? Pre-January, let's go back to February. This was a $4,000 card. It's currently a $20,000 card. So for it to crash, does it have to go back to 4K, the pre-pandemic pricing? Or is this just a correction because obviously these numbers up here were unsustainable? The answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. This is probably going to end up sub 20K soon, especially if they get eliminated sooner rather than later. And then the question is where's the bottom? I do not believe personally that 3 to 4K is the bottom. My guess, let's say 15. It's 2,000 pop. People will be hesitant to sell. Some will hold, wait for the market to rebound, etc. But I could easily see this card potentially getting back down to 15K. Now, if you bought anywhere in here, you're screwed. Or not screwed, but you're hurting. You now have to take a long-term approach with that card. If you bought anywhere in this run-up, you might be okay. You might even be able to sell for a slight profit, even on the downswing. Or you could get greedy and hope that it goes back up again. At LeBron long-term, you're probably pretty safe, but you might have to put it in a safety deposit box and just forget about it for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, who knows? Let's look at Jordan. PSA. I went with the PSA 9 just because there's way more data points and it basically follows the same trend. Obviously, you're not getting the $400,000 to $500,000, $800,000 highs like you do with a 10. But a PSA 9 peaked at 90,000 in February. Early February is when the Jordan market was at its peak. It is back down to $27,000. Back in February, this card was going for 4K, 5K, 7K, 8K, 9K. Right after the pandemic, everything dove a little bit. It got down to 4,200 right when lockdowns first happened, when people were kind of freaking out a little bit. And then it slowly went back up again, a 10K card over the summer. And then it obviously went on its wild run that we saw. But even during Last Dance times, it didn't get to where it is now. It peaked way later, but look, you could see that was not very sustainable. It was up there for not even a month, just a couple weeks where it went absolutely ballistic and is immediately pulled all the way back It's basically now back to pre-Christmas pricing on Jordan PSA 9s. Like I said, I use the 9 because it just gives us the most data points. So, has this crashed? Was this the bubble? If I could draw a line right here, right across here like this, is that the bubble? And now it's going to pull back to around like this 25K price, 20K price, somewhere in that range. And then this ends up being like this December through April was the bubble. And this is the bubble releasing or the crash or the correction, whatever. Use whatever term you want. They all get thrown around a ton. Let's look at some other sports. Football. I went with Mahomes Optic PSA 10. This is kind of like his main base rookie card since his prism is automatically a silver. And you could see while it is not tanking as hard as the basketball market is, this is where I was talking about earlier. I think the basketball market tanking so hard is spooking the other markets because you're seeing the last couple weeks, and this card was actually trending up. The season ended, it dipped down because they lost the Super Bowl, got down to around $2,000, $1,700, $1,750, peaked back up at $2,150, $2,200, $2,250, that price range for about a month. Now what's happened? It is back down. Last sale was, I think, around $1,594 for the last Mahomes Optic PSA 10. So is this just because people are bored with football in the offseason, or is this because of the regular market pullback? Does this keep going down? Where does the floor out on this? Does it get all the way back down to, November pricing when it was a $900 card? This one's sliding a lot slower because I think there's a little bit of a demand for football, but you could see that same backslide happening. Once again, not as bad as the NBA is. Let's look at baseball. Same thing. Peaked up in the early preseason and now has been on a downward trend. Even guys that are playing extremely well. Acuna and Tatis have both been playing really, really good. Soto's season was kind of lost to start the season. He's turned it on lately, but you could see the same ebb and flows. Dipped down in the offseason, peaked up, and is now beginning to pull back again. So essentially following that same pattern. Now, with baseball, is this a case that it's because it's in season and guys' prices tend to go down when they're actually in season, or is this a general pullback of the market, or a little bit of both? Soto Chrome 10s are getting real cheap right now. I've talked about it a bunch. They're down to like $350, and I've seen them cheaper off eBay. I've seen them listed for $325 multiple places. That card being that cheap is kind of wild when it was a $500 to $600 card in March. So is that just the normal ebbs and flows of the baseball season, or is that more of the general health of the market? This was an interesting one to me. This is the graph for, and I can't make this go way back in time. I can only do the last like 75 sales or so. This is the chart for Prism retail boxes, the purple boxes, 24 pack little retail boxes. I know for a fact these were up to $2,000 at one point in time. Back in February, they were at about $1,400, $1,500. They are currently going for around $850 to $900. You never usually see wax tank like this. So this is kind of a concerning thing as well, is that wax prices are going down because wax is always, the supply is always getting less. Someone's always opening somewhere, something somewhere, which means there's one less box out on the market, especially with breaking being as popular as it is. We've seen lots of reports and rumors on the breaking side about that slowing down. So the smaller time breakers getting zoned out. You scroll through a Facebook group now, you don't see as many people running breaks like you would before, partially because the retail pipeline's been cut off to a degree from Target, and the limits are in place, and the bot game got a little bit trickier. So once again, you have all these extenuating circumstances. The recent reports from the Dallas Card Show of people not wanting to inject cash in the system. The market's scared right now, I think, or hesitant, maybe is the right term for it. And once again, I do fully believe you can 100% make money in the card market. Absolutely. But right now, I'm going to call this a readjustment period. prices are realigning. And there's still some scary things coming. The massive PSA backlog has not released. I've given my thoughts on that multiple times. I think it's slightly overrated, but it's still cause for I need to file that away. You know, what happens to all these people that have massive grading bills coming because PSA bills you when they ship the cards back to you, and the cards that they sent in all of a sudden aren't worth nowhere near as much. You know, are we going to see? I made the same comment on Dakota's live stream the other night. You know, are we going to see like legit fire sales, not fake Facebook fire sales, like legit, like, okay, I got 3K in grading fees on my credit card bill that's due in 30 days. I need to move this stuff. Like, let's go. All right, here, you want to you want to see fire sale? We're talking fire sale. And does that start undercutting the comps more? And like I said, we don't really know what the entire PSA backlog is. How much of it's Magic cards? How many of it's Pokemon? How much of it is Marvel cards, non-sports cards of other shapes and sizes? And how much of it is just junk? You know, I heard plenty of reports of people just literally grabbing stuff out of long boxes and submitting it bulk before the price increases and stuff went into effect. So I have to imagine there's a million Jalen Noel, KZ Okpala, base prism, silver prisms in that backlog that are going to be coming due. But you have a $20 or $30 per card grading fee on that, and all of a sudden that card's worth $10, $15, $20, especially if it catches a 9. You know, then people are going to be upside down on that stuff. They need to get out of it. So I don't know, you know, did we solve anything here? No. Is the sports card market crashing? I think that's too strong of a term. And, you know, I say this all the time. It's crash back to what? Like, what are we going back to? You know, I stand by. I don't think unless Luka loses his legs, he's not going back to his PSA 10 being $100 like it was in 2019. That's not going to happen. That card will settle out. Essentially, right now, someone took the snow globe, shook it up the last 3 months, and we're still just all waiting for the dust to settle. And I think once we get through this, my long-term prognosis is that at some point in time, maybe it's by the time the NBA season starts back up again over the next couple months as the PSA backlog clears, etc., that we do kind of get back into the more cyclical patterns. I think we desperately need a full, nice and long NBA offseason. Whether you like it or not, the NBA market drives the entire sports card market. It's the biggest of the 3 major sports by far. It gets all the hype and all the chatter. But I think we desperately need an NBA offseason to kind of save us from ourselves. Because typically, once again, once the prices level out, once these guys stop playing, that's when things start going up. It's just a matter of where do we hit the bottom. So in the short term, I am in cautiously watch and wait mode. I have been I've been selling some stuff on the way down. I'm still profitable on it. Kind of amassing a stash. I haven't been buying much. I've been buying more comic books than cards, which is well documented. But I'm just kind of sitting on it, waiting for something to fall into my lap. I don't know what that something is yet. I have a number of things I'm keeping my eye on. Luka Optic Color, Patrick Mahomes Optic Base, a LeBron Topps Chrome, maybe in an 8 or a 9 or a BGS 9, something in that range. Soto Acuna Tatis Refractors, stuff like that. Things that would have normally not necessarily been out of my price range, but if I can buy stuff like that on the dip, I will fire at some point in time. The question is when. Maybe I'll be a little late to the party and miss it on its way back up. But at this point, I think I would rather fall on that side than on the buying too soon side. And I think a lot of people are in that same boat. Because like I said, I think the market's going to bottom out here after the NBA playoffs. I think that's where we see the bottom is sometime this summer. And then we see what happens from there. I think at that point, the market resets itself. New norms and baselines are established. And then I think we get back into the cyclical nature of the card market. And then we see where it goes from there. But that's my kind of thoughts and predictions on how this all shakes out. What that means for prices, I don't know. But like I said, I don't believe that we've hit the bottom yet on some of this stuff. The pain is still coming. So how bad it hurts, we don't really know. And it's going to hurt some more than others. If you're in the position where you're sitting on a wad of cash, I've heard people at Dallas that had money and were ready to spend could get deals on some stuff. Not all the vendors. A lot of vendors were holding back. I'm hoping to have someone on that I will talk to Tuesday evening for a video posting Wednesday or Thursday to kind of get the vibe from Dallas. I don't want to spoil anything. So, but I'm having a guest on to talk to you about the Dallas show and just kind of market vibes and thoughts coming out of that. Since I wasn't able to go, I want to talk to someone that was there and get some feedback from them on kind of where they think the state of the trading card world is at this moment. And we'll see what happens. So that's all I got for you guys and girls. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you want fancy charts and graphs like this, check out Market Movers. If you want to help support the channel and you're going to make some purchases, use the eBay affiliate link. That's all I got for you. Catch you on the next one. Peace.